Hello, folks. Old Buster again. Just want to thank everybody dropping in, and especially old Hired with his company, Doug Holmes Construction in Lubbock, Texas. He's a dirt man over there. If you ever need a good one, that's one to have. Doug helps us out a lot. That's Hired. That's one of the boys, you know. Well, this story now, you know, it's got to be about Walter. Walter and them boys, his brothers, is a sight if you ever seen one. So this old story here is about brothers. Well, Buster and the boys were just a-visiting with Walter when they was over to the house to give Miss Ollinger some gifts for her birthday from their mamas. Well, Buster's grandma done give her a quilt she made for her, and Jessie's mama sent her a set of doilies and a cross-stitched set of pillow covers for the bed, and a fine set of bedclothes they was. The Hired's mama done crocheted a afghan with her favorite colors, plus all manner of canned goods and a cake to boot. Well, Walter done got to telling about his and brother Melvin, 'cause Melvin done got Walter into trouble again, which that ain't nothing new. Melvin was his pa's favorite of the bunch of kids, and he could do no wrong. Melvin done slipped up to the window in the kitchen and stole a mess of cookies that Miss Ollinger had a cooling. Melvin done give Walter a cookie, and about that time, his and pa seed him a-eating that cookie and took after him with a willer switch. Now, Walter tried to tell him Melvin done give it to him, but his and pa figured he done got Walter dead to rights and the switching he got. Well, Walter said old Melvin was a fair-haired all right and began to telling us a few tales nobody ever heard before. First of all, Melvin was a lots bigger than Walter them days and tussled with him morning and night, just a-picking on him, you know, deviling him. Well, now older brother Ike was a cute feller as there was, the gals and women folks said, and about in betwixt Walter and Melvin in size, you know. The boy was just a natural-born, real-life, honest-to-goodness horse whisperer and genuine cowboy. Rode from daylight to dark. Always up before daylight, a-sitting horseback and on the range till dark 30. Now, old Ike could hold his own, too, and didn't say much, but if and he couldn't walk away, then the fight was on. Don't reckon he ever lost to Walter's recollection. Anyhow, back to old Melvin. He just laughed at Walter and smacked his lips eating them cookies. Likeable cuss he was, and Walter dearly loved his brother. But he would crack him good when he got the chance. He'd hide behind the door, and when he come by, he'd whack him good. Guess all that tussling was what made Walter tougher than boot leather. Well, Walter told the boys he remembered the time when the high sheriff there in Groom that they deviled so much, you know, had it in for the whole Ollinger clan. Mainly 'cause of Melvin, as we was a-hearing. Well, once Melvin and the Britton boy got off to the auction with Melvin's pa, his and pa done bid on and won a Ford truck motor he needed. Believe it was a 460. That's a big one, you know. Lot of power. Well, Melvin and Henry Britton growed up together as thick as thieves, as them two was, always at each other's side. Of course, there was old Manley, too. They done got drunker than a pole-axe mule and three sheets to the wind to boot. They was drinking that liquor, you know. And that's homemade. Ain't none of that bought liquor. Well, they took off after Melvin's pa left on out and went on back to the house. They was all over the road, you see, spinning wheels in that pickup truck and a-weaving and running off the side of the road and just a-hollering and hooping and keeping their snoots full of that liquor. Well, don't you know they done throwed that 460 Ford motor plumb out the back of that truck and didn't even know they left it lay in the middle of the road. They just kept on driving back to town. Well, as folks see, and sure enough could testify, just like at a Sunday meeting or the courthouse, that the high sheriff come hightailing it down the road and never even seed that motor smack dab in the middle of the road. Well, he hit that dang motor about 80 miles an hour, I reckon, and totaled out that new police car. Done shoved the radiator a-spouting steam and the engine plumb up in the front seat. About that time, Walter come by and seed that high sheriff all bum-fuzzled and out of sorts. He was a mite fractious. His cigar was all smashed in and spread all over his face, and his glasses was all cockeyed too. He just didn't know what hit him. Well, Walter went on back to the house where his and Pa was taking a nap and roused him up. Real careful like, too. Told him Melvin done lost that motor he bought at the auction out of the back of the pickup and left her on the road, and that the high sheriff had done wrecked the police car when he run into the thing. Well, they say during that time word got around and Melvin come back with a winch truck and was a-looking for the motor. Couldn't find it 'cause it was knocked plumb off the side of the road in the weeds and the bushes somewheres. But you can bet your bottom dollar that the high sheriff knowed who done it when Melvin come by in that winch truck. Lord, them boys. Another time Melvin and Henry done slipped up on the high sheriff and tied a dead dog they done found on the side of the road to his and back bumper. Now, old Sheriff Raines was his name, never knowed it was back there. He done run up and down the main street with that dead dog dragging behind till he wore him plumb to a nub. He wasn't none too happy about that neither, but didn't rightly know who done it, but figured right it was Melvin. Women was a-hollering all over town that the sheriff done killed that dog dragging him like he was, and not paying no never mind to anything but his radio. Well, the folks just didn't know that dog was dead is all, but it sure made that high Sheriff Raines look awful bad in their eyes, not to mention the mess it made on the street. Had to call out the Groom Volunteer Fire Department to wash down the street too, and they wasn't real happy about it. Well, folks talked about Melvin and his shenanigans all the way out to California. Walter done got word about it, and he was a-grinning like a cat that ate the canary. Then Melvin done got peeved 'cause he felt like they was a-picking on him, which they was, and he deserved it now. Him and some fellers, and you just know Henry was there too, done got in that old Ford of his'n, and a bit after midnight run right on plumb through the policeman's sheriff's yard and through his'n garden. Problem was, the police feller, that's the high Sheriff Raines, done left his lawnmower in the garden, and Melvin and the boys tore that thing to a million pieces, and it seems like the war was on then. Well, the high sheriff sure enough had it in for them Ollingers then. Heck, when Mary Gale was a-sparking with Barry, he was a Brown boy, and he had a pretty sister too. They stopped him and give old Barry a ticket for speeding when he was parked out by the south end of the ball field, a-sparking with Mary Gale. Even warned him not to chew no juicy fruit 'cause they'd get him for littering if he throwed the paper wrapping or the gum on the ground. Told him to watch who he was running around with too. The Ollingers. Now, Carla May done got her bicycle took to the courthouse 'cause it was parked on the sidewalk by the Dairy Queen. Now, don't that beat all? Them gals ain't done nothing to nobody. Melvin had smoke coming out of both of his nostrils and ears too by that time, even if he did bring it on himself. Matter in a wet hand. Well, him and old Henry slipped up to that high Sheriff Raines' new car when he was getting himself a root beer float at the Dairy Queen. They put boards with nails in them behind the front and back tires, and then come round the corner just a-squealing their tires. Well, that there sheriff come a-busting through the door and then jumped into that new fancy police car and took off like a twister in April. Well, guess what? 4 flat tires and running on the rims? Well, he had to wait 3 days to get new wheels and tires that time. Well, Groom ain't very big, you know. Groom may be small, but it's famous now, with the leaning tire and the biggest cross this side of Australia, and the Ollingers. Well, old Melvin was just a-doing something all the time. He done put a bunch of cows in the schoolhouse just to be funny. Getting up to the top floor wasn't too hard a thing to do, but they had a heck of a time getting them out 'cause they'll go upstairs real easy, but coming down's another thing. Believe they just as soon jump out the windows to do that. Boy, that took a little bit to get everybody in town to get them cows out. Walter said he was on probation by the county judge till he married up with Lou Ann. The judge told him his and wife could take care of him from now on to keep him on the straight and narrow and out of mischief. Well, old Melvin is still a mess, I tell you. But still kind of likable, you know. Pretty stout for a farmer, too. Reckon all them Ollinger young'uns turned out just fine, though. Well, Mary Gale married up with Barry Brown. Guess old high Sheriff Raines didn't scare him none, huh? She done went to hair parlor school and has the griddle there in town. Now Carla May come to be a banker and married up too. Married a feller by the name of Gary Ashland. He's some kind of spy for the government or something. Nobody rightly knows, but he makes good money though. Buster'd been trying to get old Gary to grin and told Walter he'd give him a big old hug him and a squish him up a bite and just might get a grin, and like old Melvin did when Buster kissed his in Hayden. He told him he just loved him right there in the middle of Walter Boyd's wedding. Old Melvin turned 4 shades of red, but he needed it, and Buster wouldn't turn him loose. He had him a time to get away from him now. I kept on tending cows and all, and married a famous good-looking woman, Stella's her name. She was a basketball player and then went to teaching. Well, guess Walter and Melvin is pretty close at that, but since Walter got to be fair size, it ain't so easy to whoop no more. Walter turned out about 6'4" and 240, and I'd say jawbreaker hard at that. Well, after the boys set for a spell, Miss Ollinger come out the kitchen and asked them in for a bite before they left on out to the house. Sure was good eating too, except that Jessie don't like no chicken and dumplings, you know, nothing sappy, and no corn. So she fixed him a plate of pork chops. Melvin run in and got most of them too, plus hired sweet tater pie. All the race is on. That boy's still a pickle, I tell you. Well, till the next time, it's old Buster signing out. Have a blessed day.